Why does it feel like everything is getting more expensive, even when you're earning more? By the end of this video, you'll understand what inflation actually is, why it's hitting daily life so hard right now, and what you can realistically do about it without hype, panic, or complicated finance talk. Here's the simple truth. Prices go up over time. That part is normal. But when prices rise faster than your income, life starts feeling tight. Rent climbs, groceries cost more, fuel, transport, subscriptions, phone bills, everything inches upward. Credit card bills staying harder at the end of the month. And even if your salary increases, it often doesn't keep up. You might be earning more on paper, but somehow there's less left at the end. That gap, that uncomfortable feeling that money isn't stretching the way it used to, that's inflation at work. Inflation isn't new, it's been around for generations. But what's different now is how visible it feels in everyday decisions. People notice it at the grocery store. They notice it when renewing rent. They notice it when a normal monthly budget suddenly doesn't work anymore. So what is inflation really? Inflation, simply put, is when prices rise and purchasing power falls. Purchasing power just means how much stuff your money can buy. If something cost $10 before and now costs $12, your money didn't change, but it's power dead. You're holding the same bill, but it doesn't go as far as it used to. This is why inflation feels so personal. It's not about one product becoming expensive. It's about most prices rising together. That's what makes it feel unavoidable. You can switch brands, cut back or delay purchases, but eventually inflation shows up somewhere you can't escape. Here's why that matters to you. When inflation rises faster than your income, you're effectively earning less in real terms, even if your paycheck number is higher. This is why people say things like, "I'm earning more than ever, but I feel broke." Nothing is wrong with you. It's not bad budgeting or bad discipline. There's also a common misunderstanding here. People often say inflation means companies are greedy. And while some price increases do come from profit decisions, inflation is bigger than that. It's about the entire money system, how money flows, how costs spread, and how changes at the top eventually reach everyday life. To really understand inflation, you need to know why it happens in the first place, and there are a few big forces behind it. To really understand inflation, you need to understand why it happens. Inflation isn't one decision made by one person or one company. It's usually the result of multiple forces pushing in the same direction at the same time. And when those forces line up, prices start moving faster than people expect. The first big force behind inflation is simple: more money chasing the same amount of goods. When the amount of money in an economy grows faster than the amount of real things being produced, food, housing, energy, services, prices tend to rise. Think of it like this. If 10 people want 10 houses, prices stay relatively stable. But if 20 people suddenly want those same 10 houses, nothing about the houses changed, but the competition did. Prices go up. The second force is rising costs for businesses. Businesses don't exist in isolation. They rely on fuel, electricity, workers, raw materials, transportation, and financing. When those inputs become more expensive, the extra cost doesn't disappear. A factory pays more for energy. A delivery company pays more for fuel. A restaurant pays more for ingredients and wages. Over time, those higher costs move through the system and show up in the final prices people pay. The third force is something called demand shocks. This happens when a lot of people suddenly want more of the same essential things at the same time. Housing, food, energy, healthcare, these are not optional. When demand for essentials spikes, prices can rise very quickly. All of these forces can exist at the same time, and when they do, inflation accelerates. That's why inflation rarely comes from just one cause. It's the overlap that makes it powerful. Now, why does this matter to you? Because inflation isn't just an abstract economic idea. It's a process that eventually reaches your wallet. It starts somewhere far away, policy decisions, global supply chains, energy markets, but it ends with everyday choices: what you buy, what you delay, what you cut back on. There's another misconception worth clearing up here. People often hear that inflation is bad and assume it means something has gone wrong, but the reality is more complicated. Some mild inflation is actually normal. In growing economies, mild inflation is expected. The real issue isn't inflation itself, but speed. When inflation happens too quickly, wages can't adjust in time. Savings lose value faster than people anticipate, and planning becomes difficult. And that brings us to an important question. If inflation has always existed, why does it feel so intense right now? Why does it feel louder, more stressful, and harder to ignore? That's what we'll unpack next. So if inflation isn't new, why does it feel so intense right now? Why does it feel louder, more stressful, and harder to ignore? There are a few reasons for that, and they all connect directly to daily life. The first reason is that inflation is hitting essentials the hardest: food, rent, energy, transportation. These are the things people can't avoid. When the price of luxury items go up, people adjust. They delay purchases or switch brands. But when the price of essentials rises, there's no real escape. You still need to eat. You still need a place to live. You still need electricity and transport. The second reason inflation feels worse is that wages almost always lag behind prices. Prices usually rise first. Salaries, if they increase at all, follow later. That delay matters. During that gap, people absorb higher costs without higher income. Even when wages eventually rise, the damage has already been done. Savings may have shrunk. Debt may have grown. Budgets that once worked no longer do. The third reason is expectations. For a long time, many people were used to relatively stable prices. Monthly expenses felt predictable. Budgets didn't need constant adjustments. When that stability disappears, even modest increases feel dramatic. It's not because people are overreacting, it's because predictability is gone. All of this means inflation hurts most when your spending is concentrated on necessities. The less flexibility you have, the more intense inflation feels. Two people can experience the same inflation rate and feel completely different levels of pressure depending on how their money is spent. This isn't about winners or losers. It's about exposure. Understanding where you're exposed to inflation helps you respond calmly instead of emotionally. And that's important because emotional reactions to inflation often lead to poor decisions. Now that you understand why inflation feels so heavy right now, the next step is the most practical one. What can you actually do about it? Now that inflation makes sense, the question becomes practical. What can you actually do when prices keep rising but life doesn't pause? The first step is awareness. Many people feel inflation without clearly seeing where it's hitting them. Tracking real expenses, not guesses, not rough estimates, but actual numbers, creates clarity. The next step is separating needs from wants. Inflation punishes blurred spending. When everything feels essential, pressure builds fast. But when you clearly know what you must pay for and when you can adjust, even small changes restore a sense of control. This isn't about cutting joy or living extremely. Another quiet trap is lifestyle inflation. When income rises, spending often follows automatically. A slightly better apartment, more subscriptions, higher monthly commitments. Over time, those fixed costs become harder to sustain. Avoiding lifestyle inflation doesn't mean refusing progress. Debt also behaves differently during inflation, especially high-interest debt. Inflation doesn't cancel interest. In fact, rising costs make debt feel heavier because there's less room left in monthly budgets. This is why being mindful of high interest balances matters more during inflationary periods. The most important idea to remember is this: inflation hurts most when you're unaware, not when you're prepared. Preparation doesn't mean predicting the future or making perfect moves. It means staying informed, reviewing spending regularly, and adjusting early instead of reacting late. Zooming out, inflation isn't the crisis button, it's a signal. It tells you how fast prices are moving and how quickly clarity becomes valuable. You don't need perfect forecasts, you don't need panic, you need understanding. Once inflation stops feeling mysterious, it stops controlling your emotions. So here's the takeaway. Inflation isn't random, it's not invisible, and it's manageable when you understand it. If this video helped you see money more clearly, subscribe for calm, practical finance explainers. Comment below, what price increase have you noticed the most? And then the next video, we'll break down what actually happens to your money when it sits in the bank. Money doesn't have to be stressful.